Welcome to Labor's View. This show is brought to you by the very hard-working and dedicated members of the Communications Workers of America, Local 1081. I'm David Weiner, president of the local and host of the show. It's my great pleasure to have with us once again, for the second time, Ms. Analilia Mejia.
Yes, correct.
Thank you. I screwed it up last time and said, whatever. But she is the, executive director?
Yes, of the New Jersey Working Families Alliance.
And what is the Working Families Alliance?
New Jersey Working Families Alliance is a coalition of different advocacy groups, unions, environmental organizations who are really focused on growing independent, strong political power in New Jersey for working families.
And it says on your website, we run aggressive campaigns to raise the standards for working families.
Yes, we do. So we do a lot of work identifying progressive candidates, helping them develop their campaigns, helping them with their field program, getting our affiliates get involved in running IEs for them, and all with a focus of, again, electing strong progressives, grassroots level work in order to promote this broader policy agenda.
And you're also working to get younger people involved?
Yes.
Next generation?
Yes, so we
Three
have
old fogies.
So soup to nuts for us. We do work organizing and outreach with youth. We just last month, or just this month, forgive me, had our youth conference, what we called Your NJ. We had about 40 young activists from the ages of, I believe, 16 to about 25, just getting prepared to do real activism, understanding how to create media messages, interesting actions, organizing campaigns, advocacy, and just understanding politics so that they can make change.
In a macro sense, what do you think about the younger generation in terms of let's say the millennials, about their knowledge and interest in politics?
It's interesting. There was an article recently that said millennials have a confused sense of politics. I don't know if you read it. Not that I'm prescribing or saying that they do.
I have two of them, and they do.
In that young people are upset or have a distaste for injustice, and are eager to get involved, particularly in ways that are either through new media, interesting actions, activism, but they feel at the same time disengaged from the more, I think, established ways in which activism has happened, labor unions, traditional organizations. At times they reject those organizations as part of the problem instead of viewing it as part of the solution.
Not our union, of course.
But we have been really successful in engaging young people. A lot of the work that New Jersey Working Families has done in the town halls, calling the question on the governor.
Once explain what the town halls are.
So the governor this summer,
Governor Christie.
Governor Christie, this summer, as in years past, had a series of town halls in which he wanted to engage his constituents. It just so happened that he did most of them in Republican strongholds.
In the afternoon.
In the afternoon, when working people can't participate, in places where there isn't public transportation, if you wanted to get to it. And he bussed people in, or there were buses of people that were brought in that just so happened to agree with the governor. It was, in our estimation, a staged pro-Christie event.
Which the citizens, the taxpayers, pay for.
Absolutely.
Not his campaign.
No, not his campaign. And so we started engaging our affiliates, and specifically our youth affiliates, and our youth members to call the question on the governor and bring a broader perspective into those discussions, one that reflects questions that working families have. And so They called the question very effectively on his stance on the budget and his bad budget priorities. His stance on
in that sense,
higher
he's been
education.
overestimating revenues.
Yes, he had a diluted. Our opinion is that the governor put out wildly incorrect or inflated estimates as to revenue, and then at the end used it as an excuse when there was a shortfall that anyone could have guessed was going to happen. He used it as an excuse to shortchange his, the residents and workers of New Jersey.
Specifically, the public employees, by cutting back on the amount of money.
Yes,
he was going to put.
Specifically,
he was legislatively supposed to put into the pension fund.
Absolutely. So by shorting workers, union workers on their pension, but it goes beyond that, right? He has still continued the cuts to homeowners in not reinstituting the rebates and credits. He has still maintained all the cuts to higher education, the no investment to transportation, the no investment to our communities. So he shorted not only people who are counting on their pension, which was wrong, but also the drivers that drive up and down New Jersey roads. That was wrong. He shorted college students by not really funding higher education in the way that he promised he would. He campaigned on this idea that he would raise higher education spending, and actually it was the reverse. So he shorted college students, he shorted drivers, he shorted homeowners, he shorted the working poor, he shorted people counting on their pension, he shorted everybody in the state. And so we called the question. We think that for the governor, it's all a question about priorities and choices, right? This is the reality for all elected
officials. I'm a little more cynical. I think, and I think others would agree, that this is all part of his running for president and appealing to the right-wing base, right?
So for every elected official, for all of us really, it's all about deciding what is your priority, what do you want to invest in, and what are you willing to shortchange, right? For the governor, it's been investing in his political career, investing in how he is quote-unquote viewed by the GOP, viewed by people, Republicans in Iowa or New Hampshire, and he is willing to shortchange the state. He's willing to shortchange New Jerseyans in order to invest in his political career.
And he's never here anyway because he's the head of the Governors Association, so he's out of the state the whole summer.
So that's what I mean. It's about choices, and for Christie, his choices lead him in a direction that doesn't really serve, in our opinion, and I'm sure yours and many of the viewers, the interest of regular New Jerseyans.
The saddest one to me is when he made he's making the disabled adults come back from Pennsylvania from group settings and making them go into homes, and the parents are usually generally very old, like I am, and they're like freaking out because these are really, really, a lot of people, it was a whole show on it, they have not tremors, what's that other thing you have when you go seizures, and it takes an hour to feed some of them, and they're just told the mentality of a 4-year-old or something like it, and it's just totally disrupting their lives and their treatment. And they actually had the nerve to say to these parents that if you want them to stay in Pennsylvania, then you pay the money instead of Medicaid. And these are people, many of them being older on fixed incomes. So it's very, very sad.
I think across the board in that instance, I'm not as familiar, but I think across the board, this governor has shown throughout his career, but definitely in his tenure as governor, that he doesn't really care about working people, working families, the working poor, the elderly.
Unless the Republicans.
But even
actually,
then,
he screws them, but they still voted against their own best interest.
I think it's a matter of he is the one thing that our governor is very good at is the spin. He has been very successful at spinning things that are very clearly in his self-interest and in the self-interest of a very narrow group of narrow population, and spinning it somehow to pit groups against
each other.
against each other. He's
Very verbally adroit. He's a very smart guy. To anyone who other than has actually watched him and realize he can be humorous, very easygoing. He can speak off the cuff.
Yes.
I was in Belmar when he was there, and that's when he insulted the young lady who was the head of the school coalition here, the ones that did the walkout.
Yes, the Newark Student Union.
Right. Yeah. She asked him a question, very simple, but very politely. She said to him, I was on the other side of the building where it was outdoors, which is rare for him, and she said.
Which will probably continue to be rare because
Yeah.
he was unable to control.
Yeah, it was because the people in front of me got thrown out because they stood up and started chanting stuff. But basically, her thing is, you were brought up for 5 years at least of your birth. You were born and raised in Newark for 5 years. Then he went to Livingston. But he's been 100, by his own admission in Belmar. He said it was his 125th town hall meeting. And she pointed out respectfully, very nicely,
Never been to
why
Newark.
haven't you been to Newark? And his response, I'm paraphrasing, was, well, I'm in Newark all the time. Well, the truth is, the only time he's in Newark is when he's with the county executive dedicating a statue or something up at the hall, or he's at the zoo, but that's not Newark. But he said that if and when my staff, we determine where I go, and if we determine to go to Newark, I hope you come and I hope you speak, but I hope you ask better questions than that one. And this is a 17-year-old young lady who's taken responsibility and cares about the educational process, and he just insults her as he insulted the former SEAL and the teacher and everybody else.
Yeah, when in doubt, it seems like his playbook is when in doubt, punch your opponent in the nose. But
with your armed guards around you.
Of course,
right.
Of course. Here's the thing. Again, it was a critical question to ask. It pointed to the fact that he essentially only seeks friendly audiences for these kinds of interactions. But again, yeah. But so just bringing it back to what we do,
working families.
Yes,
working people.
Yes. We work closely with those students, and that particular student who raised that question. A lot of the organizations that were present are actually affiliates of our organization, and that young lady actually participated in our URNJ activist conference. Before that,
yeah, we bring our own flies.
Yes. Before that town hall in Belmar, we participated in another town hall where we called the question, and he called one of our youth organizer. He called him a professional protester. He called several of our folks professional protesters. If at that instance we were like, if what you mean is that we are prepared, we're asking the right question, we're tenacious,
then
and we're there, then yes,
Yeah,
we are professionals.
Well, and you have a big focus now on the working people.
Yes.
And working people who don't have any sick time.
Yes.
So what have you been doing in that regard?
So last time I came on this show, I talked a little bit about the work we were doing on earned sick in Jersey City and in Newark. So in the last few months, we have launched a multi-city campaign to try to get, or to push to get, all private sector workers the ability to earn compensated sick time.
So there were actually workers, and a lot of them in the private sector, meaning they don't work for the government, they work for stores or restaurants
Yes.
or nursing homes,
Yes.
whatever, and they actually have allotted to them no earned sick time. So if they go off sick, they don't get paid.
Exactly. So you have, in New Jersey, you have thousands of workers, particularly in low-wage work, particularly in certain industries like food service, childcare, elder care, retail, where workers have absolutely no right to compensated sick time at any level. This is problematic not only for workers who have to choose between making ends meet and feeding their families, making rent, etc., and caring for their health or the health of their family.
And many of them don't get paid that much to begin with.
Exactly. So, I mean, if you're living paycheck to paycheck and you get the flu or your child gets sick, it could be disastrous for that month. It could throw the entire year in a tailspin. And so this is problematic not only for workers and for their families, right? But it's also it's bad for the economy in that these workers living paycheck to paycheck, barely making ends meet, getting sick means a huge economic downturn for that family and in turn an economic downturn for that community in which they live.
Because they're not buying things, they're not paying in because they don't have the money to spend.
Absolutely. And then finally, the public health impact of having a worker come in sick and serve your food, care for grandma, care for your baby, sell you products at a store. It has a real impact on the public health. We knew when we started this that there were cases in which a food service worker, a child care worker came in sick because they had to, because they couldn't afford to take the day, an unpaid day, and they ended up making clients sick, their bosses sick, their peers sick. In some instances, there were outbreaks, like for example, a mumps outbreak that happened last summer that resulted in not only people getting sick, and including clients or customers, but also shutting down that business and that was bad for the employer. So we think this is a very common sense policy. We're working in 6 municipalities to get this done. We're working very closely with members of council and mayors in multiple municipalities to do this. Could just share that in East Orange, the mayor, Lester Taylor, has embraced this idea, as has his council, and they are planning on a final vote. And it looks like it's unanimous support in that municipality on September 8th. In the city of Passaic on September 2nd, that mayor and members of the council have also embraced this idea. We're positioned to get this adopted on September 2nd. In Patterson, we're positioned to get this done in the beginning of September as well, September 9th. We're looking at Trenton, Irvington, and the city of Montclair, working closely with folks. And our hope is to have, by the middle of September, just in time for flu season, thousands of workers covered. In just doing Patterson and Passaic, 40% of workers in Passaic County will be covered. So this is huge.
What does coverage mean? Because when I read about this and I read what the employers or the chambers of commerce will say, well, we can't afford it, woe is us, or woe is we. Anyway, and
woe is we.
We is we.
We is we.
I am I. We can't afford it. It's going to cost us more money because we're going to have to replace that person for the day. How many days are we talking? This is not as extensive, right?
It is a good first step. And I do want to point out that there is a stronger statewide bill that New Jersey Working Families participates in a broader coalition called the Time to Care Coalition that is pushing for a statewide bill that will ensure a broader set of days for workers. That statewide bill can be more extensive because preemption precludes us from doing anything broader in our municipalities. But in these municipal ordinances, what we are pushing are some basic raise the floor provisions. If you are a small employer, 9 or less, you have to provide your employees a minimum of 3 days over the course of a year that they could use if they get sick.
Don't they do it in increments of hours? I thought that's what I read.
Yes. So you earn it at a rate of 1 hour earned for every 30 hours worked. And if you're a small employer, you provide a minimum of 3 days for your set of employees, so 9 or less. And if you're
per
larger,
year, 3 days for the whole year.
Yes.
Okay, I'm just letting people know it's not that big.
No, it's And if you're a larger employer, 10 or more, you have to provide a minimum of 5 days over the course of the year. Doesn't mean that you can't provide more. It means that that is the very minimum.
Right.
We're going from 0 to at least 3 and 5 across the board in all of these industries. With the exception of childcare, food service, elder care, these are critical areas for public health. Those workers, irrespective of the size of the employer, have to be provided a minimum of 5 days. Why? The CDC, for example.
Who's the CDC?
Oh, I don't even know what the CDC is. It's like the Centers for Disease Control.
They used to do that.
Sorry, I was like, do I know
blanked,
that?
yeah.
Yes. So the CDC, for example, mandate or has asked, in that example I gave you about the mumps.
Which I had as a child, so.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It was terrible.
Yeah,
I had
seemed
everything.
like it was. You were very lucky.
Oh.
You were so gifted. But when there was an outbreak, and in other instances of other outbreaks, they described the symptoms to the community and said, if you are experiencing these symptoms, stay home for 5 days, because many of these diseases become apparent after a certain window.
Right.
So in these areas and for hundreds of thousands of workers, they don't even have the ability to stay home if they wanted to. Think about the impact of that. So again, in these municipalities, they are, we got this done in Jersey City and Newark, 2 largest cities in the state. We are well positioned to get this done in Paterson, the 3rd largest city. We're doing this in other municipalities. Like I said, in Passaic, just by doing Passaic and Paterson alone, we're covering 40% of workers who need this benefit in a critical county. We're excited about this work. We're doing it in collaboration with our partners, Citizen Action, Time to Care, Blue Wave, CWA.
Thank you. It's about
SCIU,
time you got around to us.
SCIU. No, we have a lot of support from our brothers and sisters at CWA, both at the statewide level and at the local level. And we think that we're going to get this done, and it's going to be a boon to New Jersey workers and to the residents of this.
In order to facilitate this, right, it sounds obviously it's you're doing the urban areas. I mean, that's primarily where the low wage workers are going to live, because just demographics and history and income, family, etc. Have you attempted to speak to the next iterations of government leaders, such as freeholders and assembly people and senate people, in order to get their support?
Absolutely.
Because you're going to need that,
Yeah.
right? Not only at the local level, but going the other way when you try to get a statewide resolution.
So, like I said, we work in collaboration with this broader coalition, the Time to Care Coalition, on the statewide issue, and there is plenty continuous advocacy for the statewide bill. We're talking to members of the Senate and the Assembly. We also engage freeholders and county officials to do outreach and education on this municipal campaign and to support the statewide. And we're even engaging members of Congress and the Senate. We are working in partnership with Senator Cory Booker to educate folks, because this is an initiative that it's a national initiative that the President of the United States has called mayors and municipalities and states to take action in the absence of leadership in DC. Mm-hmm. Or in the absence of movement in DC in our Congress. This is something that senators, congressmen, county officials, down to county committee people can engage in and can be helpful in. Just pulling back a little, our intent here is to, again, support this broader coalition to get a statewide bill done. We honed in, we're an organization, like I said, focused on growing independent political power, in educating voters to vote their values. We see this as an opportunity to not only get a good benefit for workers who need it, but also to engage voters, to be able to pivot from that into electing.
I have another one over here.
Electing progressives in growing this political strength. I mean, I think that's what we need in New Jersey: independent political power, educated voters that we could turn out.
Yeah,
that's our goal.
As we started the conversation off, we were talking about the esteemed Governor Christie. You do, I assume, realize that were it to get any of your legislation through the Assembly and the Senate, which is probably a good probability, he's going to veto it, right?
Yes. If he were to do what he's done before, which is veto anything that was good for working people and regular New Jerseyans, then the likelihood is that he would veto it. I mean, he vetoed a provision that mandated that any company that got economic subsidies had to actually create real, good, family-sustaining jobs. He CV'd that particular language.
What does CV mean?
It conditionally vetoed.
I know, I'm just...
Okay, conditionally vetoed just that provision that would have helped families. He has vetoed instance after instance, provisions or laws that are beneficial to families. So we don't...
While giving billions of dollars of tax breaks to corporations to either come to New Jersey
or move across the street.
Right, exactly.
And so...
Like Prudential right over there.
Yeah. So, but, for us, all politics are local. We think that we can get people covered at the local level. We could use it as an issue to mobilize and engage voters. And we are building momentum and it's being noticed nationwide. And so his time in Trenton is, I'm sure, there is a sunset to that. There will be a day after Chris Christie in New Jersey, one should hope. And we are just, because he's there blocking us doesn't mean that we don't continue to build momentum and do the fight.
What can they do? What can the average person watching do?
There's a few things. We urge everyone to get involved in these local campaigns. We also invite everyone to get engaged in this broader movement. New Jersey Working Families is focused on, again, doing outreach, educating voters. We count and actually survive. Our work depends on individual members, their contributions to our campaigns.
I got you hit up on something.
Our affiliates who generously support our organization. We also invite everyone to get involved after this or during this entire campaign. We're in the middle of putting together our annual conference to engage voters on what's next, what's next on our progressive agenda. We're going to be holding a gala on September 12th. And then right after on the 13th and 14th, we have what we're calling a festival of unexpected and sometimes dangerous ideas, in which we're working with partners across the state to hold panel discussions, movie screenings, roundtables to talk about the problems in New Jersey.
Well, you better get the brakes fixed on your car because you're going to be be doing a lot of things and driving.
Maybe that's why my brakes failed.
Maybe that's it. Oh God,
I hope not.
We hope not. No, not for your beautiful son's sake as well and your husband.
Lord.
Well.
Yes.
Analilia, thank you for being on the show.
Thank you.
And I wish you the best of luck. And you know that our local will be supportive.
Yes, I hope to see you at our gala, right?
I don't know if I go out, but I'll give you some money.
I invite everyone who's watching.
I'll be there.
September 12th at the Newark Museum.
Nice venue.
Yeah, it's going to be really exciting. So go on our website and get information. It's
we'll put it up. Jerry will put it up. Yes.
Please.
The phone number and the address,
please.
30 Clinton.
Yes, please.
In Newark. Very good.
It's going to be exciting stuff. Actually, I should tell you, our keynote speaker is, since we're talking about unexpected and dangerous ideas, our keynote speaker is slated to be Karen Lewis, the president of the Chicago Teachers Union, who is preparing for a run against Rahm Emanuel. So
interesting.
It's going to be really
one of the
cool.
president's men. Interesting.
Yes.
Right. Thank you again.
Yes.
Thank you for watching Labor's View. I'm David Weiner, president of Local 1081, and we'll see you for the next show.